Hey, so welcome to this core practice that is going to undo some of the stiffness that we get from sitting at computers and our upper backs, and is also going to look at our flexibility in general and how we can um, improve upon that. As always, let's start with a seated meditation just to get ourselves centered. So use your blanket and have also a block for this practice. And shoulders back, rib cage over the pelvis. Begin by staring at something that's not going to move in front of you. And then on one of your next exhales, let your eyelids get really heavy. For the next 50 minutes or so, allow everything else that's not on your yoga mat to um, really stay outside of this space, outside of the walls of the room, or outside of the yoga mat, or outside of the rug that you are practicing on. And as best as possible, keep your awareness centered within, even within your own body. Years and years ago, I might have thought that that instruction was a little bit navel gazing. But now I think of it as so vital to us really being able to show up as our best selves in the interactions with the world. So, a couple more sweet, soft breaths. And as you're ready, crack open your eyes. Roll your shoulders a little bit, and we're going to start in standing today. So, one of the measures of flexibility that is most commonly used is this measure of being able to touch your toes. Now, it's a little bit overrated because there's a lot we can do in life without ever having to touch our toes with the knees straight. But I want you to just get a sense, like a pre-test, pre-class test of where your body is in terms of its flexibility today. So, hands on your thighs and standing, go ahead and lean down and just see where your hands naturally land. And you can try this with your knees bent or your knees straight. Maybe do a little bit of both. Park that information in the back of your mind. And although we're going to be looking at core today, we're also going to be looking at that movement in particular. There's another movement that we're also going to look at, which is for the upper back, because so many of us spend a heck of a lot of time on computers. Cross your arms over your chest, and you'll want to do this one in sitting. You could even be sitting in a chair. And keeping your elbows kind of pressing down on your chest, on your rib cage, turn as far as you can to the left with your chest, right? Your rib cage. Could be your right if you're mirroring me. And just notice the stopping point. And then turn as far as you can in the other direction and notice that stopping point. If you are a yoga person and you're used to doing these big elaborate twists where you use your arms, you may feel really, really surprisingly stuck. And that's okay because we're isolating a bit the upper back. We're not looking at how much the neck moves. We're not really able to twist a lot in our low backs. So just take this information in kind of like a pre-test. And then please join me in coming down to the ground. You're going to want to have maybe a block nearby. And this next move you can actually do with a strap if you want to, but I'm going to teach it without a strap. So have both of your knees bent, your feet flat, lay on your back, and for starters, let's just get a little bit of the synovial fluid moving in our hip joints. I've got a wall that my knees are hitting, but you can imagine if I didn't have that wall, they'd be going fully to the right, fully to the left. So just move through that Broad range of motion for your hips. And then come back to center and keeping one of your feet flat to the floor, draw your other knee towards your chest, hook your hands behind that leg, and really strongly curl the toes up to your eyes by flexing your whole foot. So even though I said toes, I mean top of your foot moves towards your eyes. So you're going to go from this bent at the knee, bent at the toes position to as much as you can in a straight at the knee and straight at the foot position. So pointing the foot and straightening the knee. Now, your knee might not look like mine, and that's okay. We're just going to go back and forth about 10 times. Bend, bend, straighten, straighten, bend, straighten, straighten. Just a couple more. And then we're going to take the leg across the body a little bit. And I want you to really, this is a trickier one. Think of your foot like a beauty queen wave, and you're going to bring the sole of your foot in towards your body a little bit. So across your body towards the opposite side. Yeah. So if this is my right leg, the sole of my foot is facing to the left as far as it can go right now. And I'm going to bend the knee, and then I'm going to point the foot and straighten. Bend and swivel, beauty queen wave, point and straighten. Bend and swivel, straighten and straighten. Bend and swivel, straight, straight. Bend, swivel, straight, straight. These, by the way, are nerve glides. You don't need to do the hand thing. That was me being a little bit dramatic for teaching purposes. And then go ahead and shake it out a little bit. Let's do the same thing on the other side. So bend, bend, straighten, straighten, bend, bend, straighten, straighten, bend, bend, straighten, straighten. About 10, maybe 15 of these on the second side. Nerve glides are basically ways to tension the nerve at one particular joint. Like imagine the nerves traveling from our brain all the way to our toes, and you can tension them as we're doing here when the leg comes across the body a bit at the ankle by bringing the sole of the foot kind of inward a tiny bit, and then at the outer hip by really dragging it across, right? But then we add some slack into the fabric of the nerve by bending the knee. So as you straighten the knee and point the foot, you're getting more tension at the side of the knee, and you might even feel that a little bit. You might feel a little bit of a nervy sensation below your knee, top of the foot. We're not hanging out in that nervy sensation and doing a stretch. So a lot of the research around flexibility does not necessarily support stretching the way that we think it should, right? And that's a really, really interesting thing to try to reconcile with our time on the yoga mat. Coming back into your flat back position, I'm going to take you through a very quickly escalating series of core strengthening moves. And you just have to be really honest with yourself about which one is best for you. So I'm going to start off pretty low and slow. Hands come to your belly, thumbs to your rib cage, pinkies to the front hip points, and you're going to flatten your back. So the first move that we're going to do is alternating the right leg into a march and the left leg into a march. Now, what is natural to feel here is a little bit of wiggle in your pelvis. You don't want to have a lot going side to side, but you might feel how this side of the pelvis kind of tucks out of the way as the knee comes up, and then this side tucks out of the way. That's normal and natural. But overall, all of this should be a really stable thing with your back kind of glued down to the floor, okay? Now, if that's really, really easy for you, we're going to take it to this next position, 90-90 position, flat back, really gluing my low back to the floor, and I'm just going to hold it here. You can flex your feet, you can point your feet, you can spread your toes, you can do whatever you want. But if you're holding this and breathing and shaking already, then you need to stay here or just do one leg at a time and then the other, okay? Now, if you're holding it and breathing and you're like, Ariele, no big deal, I've got this, then the next move is to tap down one foot and then the other, maintaining that 90-degree angle. So I told you I'd be going through this pretty quickly. Some of you guys are still here marching, maintaining this solidity in your core, softness in your neck, and there is no shame at starting slow and low like that. Okay. And then from here, let's say this is just too easy for you. Well, you can also lower one leg down and then lower the other leg straight. And remember, the secret is that we're focusing, we're using the floor as a bit of a feedback mechanism, as our teacher here, so that we know that there is, that the anterior abdominal muscles are doing their thing. This one's a nice big challenge for me. So I'm going to stay here. And I also, just so you guys can know my experience, when this leg goes too low, I feel my low back come off the floor. Part of that is just my bony structure and my soft tissue structure, but part of that is where I lose control. And so trying to get that interoception, that self-observation of my challenge point. Is it here? Is it here? Am I lying to myself thinking I can lower my leg all the way down? Probably am. And so just finding what that is for you. Okay. Park that in your brain as well. And we're going to come back to that. Feet to the floor and just twist your knees side to side. We're going to do a variation of bridge pose that is unlike a lot of yoga bridges because it's not at all about back bending. Wiggle your feet out in front of you, and let's start with the knees together, the toes pointing up towards the sky, and the heels digging into the floor. The first thing I'm going to do is pull my heels back in the direction of my glutes, of my butt, and hold that isometric for a second. Relax. We're going to do that again, and I want you to observe if your low back really arches off the floor or arches at all more than it started with. And if it does, then your goal, then you might just do these isometrics with your hamstrings while keeping your low back flat to the floor. If that's not happening for you, you're going to dig your hamstrings in. Those are your heels. Dig your heels in and rise up into a low bridge and lower down. Hands can give you feedback for your core, for your glutes, all the things. Yes. And really dig the hamstrings in, or dig the heels in, so you activate the back of your thighs as your hamstrings. And then once you're down on the ground, walk your feet out a little bit. Again, dig your heels in, up towards your head. Try not to arch your low back. Purposely tilt your pelvis backwards as if it were a bowl spilling backwards. And then drive the pelvis up to the sky. I really feel my glutes with this one. Arms are soft. You could even have them across the chest if you wish. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see this, but I am aiming to actually rise up vertebra by vertebra in this bridge so that I'm like imagining my spine as a very precious gem necklace. And we're just lifting one and then the next and then the next and then the next gem up off the ground or pearl off the ground. And that feels almost like a massage into my upper back, into my thoracic spine. Good. The back of my legs are truly burning now. And I'm going to walk the legs out a little bit and do one more really weird variation of bridge. While I'm at it, join me in switching the forearm that is on top. Dig your heels in, flatten your back, rise your hips, squeeze your glutes. Yes, feel all of that activate. Oh my gosh. And then come on down and shake out your legs. Try to keep your rib cage more or less pointing towards the ceiling as you drop your knees a bit side to side. And if you notice that one side feels a little tighter than the other, I encourage you to leave your legs on that side and just take a couple of breaths. Beautiful. Maybe rock your head a little left and right. And then coming back to center, let's go ahead and roll to the side. Come onto hands and knees. If you need a little bit of an alternative for your wrists, you can put both hands up on blocks. You can use those push-up bars, or you can be on your fists. Drop your belly down, pull the heart forward, Connect to breath. As you go into a back bend like we're in right now, please let it move into your upper back. As you exhale, round and really draw your navel towards your spine and your spine towards the sky, as if there were a magnet back here at the back of your waist. Inhale, belly down, heart forward. Exhale, round, round, round. Inhale, belly down, heart forward. Exhale, scoop and round, pull the ribs in. And then find your way to neutral out of cat and cow. We're just going to rock a little back and forth and side to side. So as I rock back, this is super nourishing for the hips and the hip joints. I'm also letting myself go a little bit side to side. Finding neutral. Reach your left leg back, toes start off on the floor, and then push the ground away with your arms. So what this does is it starts to activate your front body and float this leg up off the floor. Glutes are active, core is active, front hip points up, toes are spread. Back of the neck is long. Let's go ahead and draw the opposite hand, so right hand to the abdomen. Just feel the stability here. From your core through the back leg. Imagine we're just in a nice long hold in plank. I'm keeping my head and neck neutral with the rest of my spine. I'm starting to feel a little burn in my glutes, maybe in the hamstrings. And then, of course, I know the core is coordinating and kicking in, especially as I push down through the hand that's still on the floor. Lower, lower, and shake it out. Go through a round of cat and cow. Belly down, heart forward, big inhale. Exhale, round up to the sky. Other side. Reach, float, connect. So there's this sense of hugging to the midline that I'm doing with my right leg that's now back. Coming onto the left fingertips, drawing the left hand to the abdomen, and just holding. It's so easy to want to sink into the right shoulder, but I encourage you to really push that hand down into the floor or fist. Keep this connection on the diagonal from your front shoulder to the standing hip. Feel the glutes in this lifted leg. Good. And then lower and lower. Here's where a block comes in if you haven't already used it. We're going to use the block to help us get into a deep squat. So I want to know that no matter what your deep squat ability is, you're welcome in my class and you're welcome to follow along. And you may be able to use this next information. Certainly don't use it to push through pain or past pain, but I want you to use this information to discover if there is a part of your body, one particular part that feels like it might be stopping you from a deeper squat than you are able to do. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw one foot up a little bit, right? And then back, and then the other. And this starts to look at how well the hip folds in this direction of knee towards armpit. And if that's already a little bit tricky for you, actually having your hand on the block will help you, not hurt you. This will help you to access your core more. Try this out with me if you've got a block. You're going to lean, float, hover that foot, settle the foot slowly down, and notice how fire that becomes in your belly. Yes. Other side. If you're ever having trouble accessing your core, we're just continuing to go side to side with this. I want you to use your exhale like you're blowing up a balloon. That on a biomechanical level, just a purely biomechanical level, it activates your internal intercostals. So it shrinks down and it starts to pull at that front body movement. Anterior chain musculature. So this one, Slower you go, the more challenging it is to your core. I was moving pretty quickly. And then the next thing you want to be aware of is any limitation in your knee. Now, you probably already know if you have a limitation in your knee, but if you're not quite sure, rocking back a little to the right and a little to the left might show you what that would be, where it would be. As you rock to one side, both of your knees should be able to adapt a little bit to not just a straight back and forth, but the little back and forth, right? So let's say that those two things feel good for you, that they're not your issue, or that they're not an issue for you. Go ahead and curl your toes under, and then you're going to rock back all the way and feel your toes adapt to this transition from hands and knees to a deep squat, okay? All right, so this is going to be a big limitation for a lot of folks. If that is true for you, feel free to get on off your hands, put your toes up on something, like I'm using the baseboard of my wall right here. You could also potentially use the corner of the block to get a little bit of a toe stretch. And the idea is that you want to be able to move the muscles while your toes are on the ground. You can also do this with your toe behind you in a lunge. Fun fact, not so fun fact, one of the places that people get arthritis most commonly is in the base joint of the big toe. So if you are really noticing big difference one side to the other, don't freak out, but do notice that you want to maintain your mobility and your function, and again, not push through pain that's more than a 1 out of 10. So if anything's stopping you, you've got lots of options. You can stay in the hands and knees position. You can stay in the position I'm in, where it's not quite as hard on the feet, where the hands are taking some of the weight. Or you can mosey your way back into a deep squat or a supported deep squat by sitting on the block or bolster or even a chair. Doesn't matter to me. Rock a little side to side. Once you're in whichever squat you fits your body for today. Just a little bit of rocking. Don't worry about what it looks like too much. When the goal is to create more mobility, more flexibility in our bodies, it doesn't need to look like long, boring stretching holds. I'll say that again. Flexibility is most likely not going to come from long, boring stretching holds. It's most likely going to come from your nervous system adapting to a new vocabulary of movement, especially when that movement has some muscular activation involved. That's how your brain knows that it's useful movement. Your brain doesn't perceive this stretch that I'm doing with my arm right now as a useful movement. It just waits for the stretch reflex to be overridden. That's what it does. Okay, so where were we? From here, whether you're in a chair, ottoman, deep squat, I want you to actually rotate and spin your upper back. Now, we did this a little bit earlier without using our hands, right? We had the arms across the chest. You can do the same thing here. Rotate and hold and breathe. Rotate and hold and breathe. And you can also start to feel how your core kicks in. You can add a little bit of a crunch-like quality where you're bringing your right shoulder closer to your left hip, breathing into the back body, left shoulder closer to the right hip, breathing into the back body. So my interest is not in finding the craziest, most complicated, most fiery core things where all your muscles are burning, but adding the therapeutics in to a core focused movement practice so that you get basically your physical therapy and your core strengthening and general movement and exercise all at once. In this deep squat, if you can tolerate it, and feel free to come into a regular seated position of that, you're going to start to, with the arms crossed over the chest, Start to draw some circles here with your elbows. So up and around. Trace the biggest circle you can possibly find. And then go in the other direction. And the funny thing is, I feel so uncoordinated in one of these directions. If any particular spot in this circle feels stiff to you, any particular arc, hang out there and just breathe into it. Take a nice full breath. Lower your hands down to the floor. Block to the side. Fingers to the floor. Start to straighten your legs and bring your elbows to your knees. Bend and straighten your knees. Having your elbows here kind of locks out the relationship of your hips and your spine. And we're going to start to bring the hands to the knees and rise vertebra by vertebra all the way up to stand. So if there's some doctor's reason for you not to do this, don't do this. But otherwise, this movement has been demonized way more than it really should have been. It's a natural movement that you should be able to control. Drop your chin right back down, let the knees sag, and start to roll right back down your body, all the way right back down into a forward standing fold. And here, just shake it out a bit. Left, right. So we're not doing long holds, we're not doing major long stretches, but we are using our muscles to teach our nervous system that this position is safe, that it's okay. You can do that also by oscillating, shaking your legs a little bit, shaking your head a little bit. And then go ahead and rise right back up, stacking vertebra by vertebra. The core is part of what's bringing us up, part of what's bringing us back into the stacked position. Go ahead and find your balance on one foot, perhaps on your right leg, hands to your hips, and start to open the leg into a big circle, right and left. Settle it down, switch sides, standing firmly on this one leg, open your circle on the other. Good. Set your right foot out in front of you, left foot back behind you, and we're going into a bit of a warrior one, warrior two hybrid shape. Don't worry about how wide apart your feet get, okay? Don't worry about how deep your front knee bends. We're going to start by just bending and straightening this back leg a couple times. Getting bouncy in the position. Place one hand over your heart, one hand over your belly. And as you do this, I want you to feel that your legs are doing the work, that your spine is relatively neutral here, right? This is a really good thing to be able to distinguish. Can you keep a neutral position where your rib cage stays over your pelvis and let your legs do the work? Back leg gets strong and straight, arch lifts. We're gonna lean forward from the hips. You can keep those hands for the points of contact here. And then just lean fully into this front leg and rise up. Lean fully into this front leg and over it and rise up. 3. The legs are doing the work, but your core activates secondarily so that you stay neutral in your spine. And then go ahead and wiggle this back foot in a little bit, fully face to the front of your mat, at least with your shoulders, and cross your arms over your chest again. Just for the fun of it, switch the forearm that's in front again. And same thing we did in our deep squat. We're going to lean to the right if you've got your right foot in front. Drop down, draw your elbows towards your navel. Lean to the left. Rise up, trace the top of the circle. Over, down, over, up. Again, if any part of this arc is not working for you, feels a little tight, then go ahead and pause. Breathe into that. I think folks maybe don't fully appreciate how profoundly connected our obliques and our rib cage are. I've gone in both directions, by the way. I can't remember if I described that to you guys, but our obliques and the muscles between our ribs have to work in coordination. Rise up, maybe you felt a little burn in that leg, switch it to the other side, one hand to the belly, one hand to the chest, and just let this be all about the legs. You're going to bend and come out. You can imagine also, or actually take a broomstick in your own home, that the back of my pelvis, the upper back, and the back of my head are all staying in a line. If I had a broomstick here, they would all be touching. And that's how you know you're in a neutral spine. Neutral spine does not mean flattened without curves. It means things are stacked. You're not banana backing and you're not rounding your spine. So from here, let's find our way into our warrior one type shape. Arms crossed over the chest. Make sure it's the opposite forearm as it was before. And then again, do your big circles, tracing a circle with your elbows. Subconsciously nowadays is I spread the toes of my feet and I'm pretty much constantly lifting through the arches of my feet. We can talk about that really briefly in just a moment. As you come on out of it, straighten this leg and reach your toes to point forward. So place the weight a little bit more on the pinky toe side of the feet and see if you can, this is a bit abstract, but see if you can bring the base of your toes closer to your heels. If you can, great. If that makes no sense to you, don't worry about it. Think about lifting the arches of the feet though. When you collapse the arches of your feet, you lose potential for muscular activity on the inside of your legs. When you lift the arches of your feet, your adductors are going to kick in a little bit more. Those are the muscles on the inside of your thighs. And then when the adductors kick in, you're going to get more core work. So it might be a little less abstract with your feet together. Try lifting through the arches and sagging through the arches, lifting through the arches and sagging through them. Bit abstract, but take my word for it that the quality of your foot contact with the floor is absolutely related to your core. Left arm to the sky, legs apart. We're going to reach this left arm over and down, tapping that right shin, and up and switch. So working on thoracic rotation, hip mobility, keeping, for the most part, that same spinal integrity and neutrality, but now we're adding a reach and a rotation to it. One last time. Come back through to center. Drop down into one leg like you're coming into chair pose. Feel free to make this shallow. Feel free to really keep it keep it out of any knee discomfort that you may be having. And then from here, arms crossed over the chest, spin as far as you can to the side that you're leaned toward. Come right back up. Switch the arm that's in front, Skandasana position on the other side. Remember, it can be a very shallow lunge if that feels better for your knee. Hold it there, butt is back, and you're just going to spin to the side. Come back through to center. Bring the hands to the back of the head, lift the chest, heel toe your feet in, and just having a little space between the feet, drop your chin, reach down, vertebra by vertebra, right back down towards the ground. Notice how close your hands are to the ground now. Deep breath, shake out your head, and then come on to hands and knees again. Reaching that left leg back, float it up to hip height. Push through the ground, reach your right hand to your left abdomen. And let's go ahead and do some circles here with the left leg. So there was already quite a bit to coordinate. Now you're doing some circles about the size of a dessert plate or a saucer behind you. Ribs stay in, low back stays broad. Arm that's on the floor pushes down, activating serratus anterior. And then you're going to keep that leg up or down, it doesn't really matter. Push through the left hand that's still on the floor. Float your right arm to the sky and just breathe here. Nice full breath. You can spin the hand back and forth. You can look down and look up. And then arm comes right back down. Settle, shake, and we'll take it to the other side. Shift your weight onto the left knee as you reach your right leg back. And of course, cushion your knees as much as you wish with your blanket. Float your right leg up, active through that glute, plank-like quality through the rest of your spine. Come onto your left fingertips, hand to your belly. Reach, reach, reach. And then go ahead and get your circles going. Notice if one side is a little easier than the other. Push through the hand that's on the floor. Of course, you have the option of being on your fist, being on your block, even being on your forearm is fine. And keeping this leg up in the air or toes down to the ground, push down now through the right arm and float to the left so you get this rotation this way. Chin is going to look up and down and up and down. You can spin your hands a little bit back and forth as well. And then go ahead and lower down. I like that one a lot more than I like the thread the needle, which is a very passive stretch. That one just takes so much more of our muscles and again is going to work more in tandem with our nervous system. Walk the hands forward, draw your ribs in, push the ground away. We're going to rock back a few times, working our way up to downward facing dog. Toes are curled under if they haven't already been for you. And then lean back and up and pedal your feet. So if you have been somebody who tried to get your heels to the floor by pushing and pushing and pushing, you might notice that it gets to be easier if your movement is just more dynamic. So let your feet pedal. Let the hips go a little side to side. And then shimmy your way forward into a plank. If you want this extra core work, keep up with this pedaling action where one knee bends, maybe even taps down to the floor, and then the other. You're welcome to do this all on your forearms. Good. Settle your knees, rock it back, curl the toes under, pads of the fingers root to the ground, rise it up, downward facing dog. Walk the hands all the way back to the knees. Shake it out. This time we're going to focus on shaking out through the head. Left foot forward. Let your toes turn out and let your knees turn out a little bit. So I'm going to keep my left hand forward. I'm going to sit back with my hips until I'm looking under the left arm a little bit. I'm going to take the right hand to the shin, and I'm going to opposite shin, that's the left shin. I'm going to push the shin into the hand and really activate the muscle around my right shoulder. And then I'm just going to sway a little side to side. To be honest, I completely forget the name of this pose. I think it's something to do with elephant's trunk. And what I like about this particular version of it is that it's very dynamic. It feels a bit like an elephant trunk, swaying its trunk side to side. But also, it's very practical in a sense. And yes, I'm using my arm to lever my shoulder, to lever my upper back, but it's not about some final destination, so long as you keep it moving. Let's take it to the other side and hook the hand, lean back, and again, shift a little side to side. Face is soft, jaw is relaxed. Totally release, shake it out, oscillation. And then we're already in position, so straighten your legs. Notice how close your hands come to the floor. Notice if you can get more of the hand onto the floor or the hand further down the leg in your forward standing fold. Notice if it makes a difference if your feet are closer together, if the knees are bent. And then make your way down to the floor however would feel good to you. I'm coming through this way down to the floor however would feel good to you. I'm coming through this deep squat. Find your way into a seated position. And we're going to replicate the test that we did in the beginning with the upper back. Spin as far as you can to one side. You're looking for two things. One, do you get more range of motion, which you may or may not need? And two, does it feel more comfortable, more at ease? We're going to take it to the other side. Aware of your range of motion. Do you feel more comfortable and at ease? And then hands to your knees. Imagine you're a spatula inside of a jar of Nutella, and you just want to get the last little bit of chocolate out of there, or almond butter, or jam, whatever floats your boat. Move the spine all the way around, circular motion. You're getting side bending, back bending, forward bending. And then inhale the arms. Exhale, spin to the right. Let your hands land relatively softly. You're going to turn your head to the other side and just do some little movements of the neck back and forth. The idea of your rib cage going one direction, your head going the other is usually really, really helpful for maintaining and supporting the mobility of your upper back. Raise the arms up and we'll take it to the other side. Nice little spin to the other side. Chin moves opposite the rib cage. My arms are not pulling or pushing on anything. Unwind, come back through center, roll your shoulders a bit, and then let's make our way down to the ground. So have your blanket nearby. If you're going to do Shavasana on your back, you might even want to roll it all the way up right now if you happen to have a blanket. And if you don't, no big deal. And let's play just a little bit to refresh your memory from the beginning of our practice today. Feet flat to the floor, flatten your back. And raise one leg up, point your toes, and see how much freedom you feel in your hamstrings. Remember, we activated our hamstrings in the beginning of class, and we never tugged on them, we never yanked on them. Compare that to what would potentially be your baseline on the right and on the left. If you feel a little bit more mobile, you can come back to this practice later on and do it again. And then we'll close with a couple of marches, holds, tap downs, or leg lowers. Followed by a gentle twist. All the breath. Don't force a single thing out of this twist. Just notice. Eyelids getting heavy, bones getting heavy. We'll take the twist to the other side. And as you come back through to center, even everything out with one heels down bridge. Blanket under the thighs. Reach out your legs. Shake everything out. In a traditional Shavasana, you would probably keep your palms facing up, arms by your side. But if you prefer this nurturing feeling of putting your hands on your belly, you can also do that. There's nothing wrong with that. I put the rolled up blanket pretty high up my thigh because that gives more release and relief to the low back. And if you notice that your chin is more than, say, an orange distance, as in the fruit, the orange, if it's more like a grapefruit distance from your neck or from your chest, then I recommend you put a little tiny pillow or blanket, folded towel, etc., under your head so that you can feel those two coming closer together. Jaw is relaxed, tongue floats to the roof of the mouth. Okay, gradually allow your breath to deepen. Let it travel to your fingers and to your toes. Circle your wrists, your ankles, your knees. Move in a way that feels organic to you and eventually drawing your knees to your chest, if that feels good. Please roll to one side. Slowly rise up to seated. And if you can keep your eyes closed as you do that, great. Once you're seated, please bring your hands to the space between your eyebrows. Let's commit to kindness in the thoughts that we think, allowing for generosity in our thought. We'll bring the thumbs to the chin or to the lips, committing to kindness for sure in the words that we speak, committing to generosity and spaciousness in our thoughts around the actions of others. And then bringing the thumbs to the center of the heart, committing to kindness, not just to others, also to ourselves in all of our actions. I appreciate you so much for being here with me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. My hope is that you feel so much more free in your legs, in your upper back stiffness, and that you can come back to this practice as many times as you need.